This is the story of the creation of Norrath. It starts off a bit slow, but by the end, you will have learned how the gods created Norrath, the plains, and all the wonderful creatures within them. It took us weeks to create this short video in our spare time, so if you enjoy it and want to see part 2, please consider supporting by liking, commenting or subscribing. In the beginning, only the void existed, empty of all, whether it be time or space. A vast and endless nothingness cloaked in a deep and all-consuming silence. Within this void was the Nameless, a power so incredible that in the entire universe, it knew only itself to exist. It had no idea why it was there, just that it was. In the quiet expanse of the void, it sent itself out in search of something different. And there it was, a pocket of space. Therein lay the flow of time. When the Nameless stepped into the space, something terrible and wonderful happened. It detected the elements of space and time. The Nameless, knowing nothing of these things, freed what was in there so it could spread out in all directions, filling the space that had been empty for so long with a force that had no boundaries. Forces touched each other and the emptiness filled with swirling energies. The energies collided and crashed, were born and died and became new and different. Eventually they started to form planets that differed in size and structure. Also created were stars to watch over this new creation. But the whole chaos needed order, shaping and fine touch. And so the Nameless created the gods of power. To do so, the Nameless reached into the chaos, drew forth 4 equal portions of the stuff of existence and shaped it into the gods that would divide the universe into form. The first was named the Norraths and got the task of bringing order to the chaos. It saw that the task was indeed immense, so it reached into itself and divided into 12 equal parts. Then the Norraths went into the chaos and divided more material and created Earth. This Earth got set under the eyes of the Nameless, under the stars, so it could watch over his cosmos. The second was named Fenrir and received the task of shaping the chaos. Fenrir drew his portion, and named it Fire. He then placed it upon the stars to shed light on the cosmos. Fenrir then helped the Norraths to shape solid matter and gave warmth to the cold of chaos. The third element was water and the Nameless determined it would need many forms. So it took the portion, and split it into 3. Turumar would be responsible for the main state of the element, the water. Echi for the solid state, the ice. And Povar would lord over steam. These 3 took their portion and cloaked each world with its life-giving touch. And finally, the 4th was named Zegani. She received the task of drawing away the material in between, and setting each thing in its place. Zegani used her portion of chaos to make it into air, which she used to blow the chaos away and cushion each world from the harshness of the cold cosmos. The Nameless then looked into its new creation and felt sorrow because it could not experience it, for the creation could not contain the Nameless, and so it decided to find a way to explore this new existence. So the Nameless called out to the gods of power and commanded them to make minions that it could share in their experience of this new world. Each of the gods of power reached into their elemental planes and drew forth a portion that they shaped into what would be eyes and hands for the Nameless and themselves. They created beings of energy, much like themselves, beings born of the matter of the cosmos. The gods of power knew that balance must be maintained in the universe to keep its shape. Therefore they started to create the gods of influence. In the model of a scale, on one side a force of darkness and destruction, on the other side a force of light and creation, and in the middle a neutral force to maintain the balance without the involvement of the gods of power. And so they combined their elements to create each god in turn, good, neutral, and evil. Gods that the children of Norrath would follow until the end of time. Vishan, Crystalline Dragon and ruler of the plane of sky, was the first god to notice the world of Norrath. She found this world pleasing and deposited her brood onto the frozen continent of Velius. With one swipe of her mighty claws, Vishan opened several great wounds upon the surface of Norrath, staking her claim to this promising new world. Dragons then walked the land and flew the skies, powerful beings of great intellect, wisdom and strength. In time the other gods noticed Vishan's work, and being often petty and jealous beings, they too came upon Norrath, intent upon leaving their mark. Brel Ceralis was first, and from his plane of underfoot, a dark realm of vast caves and endless tunnels, he quietly created a magical portal to a cavern deep in the belly of Norrath. Through this portal the Duke of Underfoot seeded the depths of Norrath with all manner of creatures. Brel then returned home, sealing his portal within a labyrinthine chamber of mystical living stone. When the other gods came to Norrath, Brel Ceralis approached each of them, and after some time convinced them to meet to discuss the fate of this world. The Great Mother Tunair, and the Ocean Lord Prexus were in attendance, and Ralos Zek, the Warlord, was also there, yet in mistrust kept his distance. Brel, carefully avoiding all queries as to the origins of his information, told of Vishan's discovery of the new and potentially powerful world in which she had deposited her brood. Words befit of the King of Thieves poured forth from Brel's lips, and he proposed that they accept an alliance of sorts, to which all save Ralos Zek agreed, ignorant of the fact that Brel had already released some of his creations into the underfoot of this new world. The planet that would be called Norrath was divided up between these beings of power for the purpose of keeping the Dragon Worm Queen in check. Each would create a race of beings to watch over Norrath and keep a vigilant eye on the schemes of dragonkind. Brel claimed the bowels of the planet and created the dwarves, stout and strong, deep beneath the mountains of Norrath. In the abysmal depths of the oceans, Prexus left his children the Kedge, hearty aquatic beings of great mental power and stamina. And on the surface of Norrath did Tunair create the elves, creatures of limitless grace and beauty. Ralos Zek created the giants, fierce and formidable beings, intent upon the defense of their lands. It was inevitable that such energies involved in seeding planets with life would attract even more of the gods, and it was the elves who drew the unwanted attention of Inaruk, Prince of Hate. In a decrepit tower overlooking the dark decaying alleys of the plane over which he ruled, Inaruk waited, stoking the fire of his hate until it was a raging inferno. He cursed his fellow gods for not including him in their pact and vowed to make them regret such disrespect. From the halls of the elves' fair city, Takish the Prince of Hate snatched away the first elven king and queen. In his realm of pain and anger he slowly tore them apart, physically and mentally, over the course of 300 years. He then gathered the quivering remnants of these beings of light, and built them into his own dark sadistic image, a twisted mockery of Tunair's noble children. In depositing the Teardal, as Inaruk's dark elven creations would come to be called, back into the underfoot of Norrath, the seeds for the Prince of Hate's final revenge were sown. Fizzlethorpe, Bristlebane and Khazak Thul came next to Norrath, and Brel met them, concocting a second pact with these latter gods, wishing another excuse to create more peoples into the world. Ralos Zek again watched from afar, determined to add to his creation as well, and this time Brel convinced the Warlord to join the pact, assuring him that it was indeed an appropriate time to fulfill his desires. Deep in the earth did Brel return to create the gnomes, resembling dwarves to some extent, yet more wiry and gnarled, consumed with tinkering with devices more so than their cousins. On the surface, away from elves and giants, Bristlebane made the halflings, short and stubby folk, agile and with a propensity to meddle, and pilfer at times. Khazak Thul, Lord of Fear, was drawn to the swamps and jungles of Norrath and there created the green-skinned trolls, the reptilian lizardmen, and the Ixas of Cunark. Ralos Zek returned to the surface, pleased with his sanction to create even more peoples for his army. He made then the ogres, massive, unmovable beings of questionable intelligence, and the orcs, bred for battle and single-minded in their desire for conquest. By this time, those who are now known as the elder races of Norrath had begun to expand and mature. Villages became cities, and cities became kingdoms. Several of the races became bent on expansion. Warfare became part of their developing cultures. And of all the races, it was the ogres who quickly proved the most interested in battle and plunder, and their empire grew outward from their mountain home until it eventually encompassed a large portion of Ternaria, largest of the known continents. Their knowledge of magic grew as did their greed, until they became weary of just Norrath, and when they learned of other planes and dimensions, invaded the plane of Earth. Rallos-Zek watched with pride as his creations challenged the gods of that realm, and when they eventually knew defeat, the Warlord himself led a second invasion. The war that ensued shook the heavens and angered the greater gods. Through their combined might, Rallos-Zek was finally thwarted and forced back to his domain, after which a great barrier to the planes of power was erected, denying entry to both the lesser gods and mortals alike. And then, in what some view as spite and others justice, the gods cursed the Warlord's creations. Thousands of ogres were slain and their empire collapsed around them. The giants were spread from one end of the world to the other, forced to flee their homes as the gods brought snow and ice to their previously lush lands. Lastly, the goblins were cursed, but no writing remains of their punishment, as they no longer keep records of their history, which is perhaps an indication as to the severity of their curse. If you enjoyed this telling of the history of Norrath's creation, please consider liking the video, leaving a comment, and subscribing. Stay tuned for part 2.